There's an unwritten rule in the wild. To survive, you must know how to disappear. Every creature on Earth is engaged in an endless battle of camouflage. Tigers blend into the jungle. Leopards vanish into the shadows. Antelopes take on the colors of the savanna. Even the smallest insects must learn to conceal their existence. Because in nature, anything too conspicuous will quickly be discovered. And any creature discovered too early may pay with its life, but sometimes nature makes a mistake. A small mutation in DNA, a gene altered, a pigment appearing in the wrong place. And immediately, a creature is born with a color completely different from the rest of its species. A black panther in the jungle, a white lion in the scorching golden savanna, a striking white crocodile in the dark river. They are like misplaced dots in nature's perfect picture. According to all the laws of survival, they shouldn't have survived. But strangely, some such individuals not only survive, they become the most fearsome predators on the planet. So what happens when nature creates a genetic error? Is it a gift or a death sentence? Today we will explore the world's rarest mutated creatures, those betrayed by nature, but still finding a way to dominate the survival game, and the first story. Beginning with the most terrifying specter of the night, the Black Panther. Of all the mutated creatures that have ever appeared in nature, perhaps none is more controversial than the Black Panther. Even its name is a mystery. The truth is, there is no separate species of animal called the Black Panther. These ghosts are actually leopards or jaguars carrying a special genetic mutation called melanism, also known as melanism. A small change in DNA causes their bodies to produce an unusually large amount of melanin. This enormous amount of pigment gradually devours the original yellow color, covering their entire bodies in a layer of jet black fur. At first glance, they look like shadows born from the night. But if observed under strong sunlight, the characteristic patterns of the leopard are still faintly visible beneath the black fur, as if nature were trying to remind us that this isn't a new species, but merely another version of an old predator. In most cases, mutation is a disadvantage, an error, a deviation that makes it harder for the organism to adapt to its environment. But with the Black Panther, nature has inadvertently created an exception, a hunting machine upgraded beyond expectations. To understand why, we need to return to where these ghosts live, the tropical rainforest, a world almost entirely dominated by darkness. Layers of trees tens of meters high intertwined in a dense network. Sunlight takes hours to penetrate the ground. Even in broad daylight, many areas of the forest are still shrouded in a dim, twilight-like light. It's the perfect environment for an ambush predator, and it's also a paradise for black panthers. When night falls, that advantage becomes even more terrifying. A small deer grazing, a young monkey just leaving its troop, or an unsuspecting wild boar. None of them know that. A pair of eyes is watching them from the shadows. Black panthers don't hunt with speed. They hunt with patience. They can lie motionless for hours, making no sound, leaving no sign of their presence. Even animals with extremely sensitive noses often detect them too late, and when the distance is close enough, the hunt is over in seconds. A swooping down from a branch, a precise bite to the neck, a bite strong enough to pierce the skull of many small animals. The prey has almost no chance of resisting. The most terrifying thing is, most victims don't even see their killer. They only sense death coming from the darkness. Researchers in many rainforests have noticed something interesting. In denser, darker areas of the forest, the incidence of black panthers is significantly higher. This is not a coincidence. It's the result of natural selection. Individuals with black fur have a greater advantage in low-light environments. They hunt more effectively, they survive better, and they have a higher chance of passing on their genes to the next generation. Over time, a mutation once considered a flaw has become an evolutionary advantage. But the black panther's strength lies not only in its color, they also possess incredible confidence in many cases. Black panthers are willing to confront opponents much larger than themselves. They drag the carcasses of prey weighing tens of kilograms up trees to prevent them from being stolen. They fiercely defend their territory and often win thanks to their formidable muscular strength in some areas of South America. Local people even call them the spirits of the shadows. creatures that appear and disappear without a trace. There are hunters who live their whole lives in the forest, but have never seen a black panther in the wild, because most of the time, they are simply invisible, and that is the most terrifying thing in the wild. The strongest are not necessarily the most dangerous. The most dangerous are often the ones you cannot see. Black panthers are the perfect embodiment of that rule. A mutation once considered a mistake, but ultimately it created one of the most effective assassins on the planet, however. If the black panther is an example of how nature sometimes favors errors, then the next creature proves the opposite. Because its mutation didn't just change its fur color, it also changed its health, its fighting ability, and its position in the pack. This is the story of leaders who bear the colors of darkness, the black wolf. If black panthers are the ghosts of the jungle, then black wolves are the warriors of the frigid lands. Unlike black panthers, which operate alone, wolves are social creatures. Everything in their lives is tied to the pack. Hunting, defending territory, raising young, even survival, all depends on the strength of the group. Therefore, any individual that is too different will usually be at a disadvantage. But black wolves are a strange exception among the packs of gray wolves that stretch across North America. Occasionally, an individual with jet black fur appears, standing out like a shadow against the white snow. At first glance, that seems like a deadly disadvantage, because the snow-covered tundra is not a place for black. A gray wolf can blend into the environment. But black wolves are different. They're like a moving target, easily spotted from a great distance. According to common logic, this mutation should have disappeared long ago. But strangely, it persists. Not only that, in many areas, black wolves make up a significant proportion of the population. Scientists began to ask questions. What helped them survive? The answer lies deep within their DNA, and that story begins thousands of years ago, when the first wild wolves came into contact with domestic dogs, during the natural mating process that spanned many generations. Some genes from domestic dogs passed into the wild wolf population. Among them was the gene that produces black fur, but color is only the tip of the iceberg. What really matters is what those genes carry. Research shows that black wolves generally possess stronger immune systems. They are more resistant to a wider range of infectious diseases, especially those commonly found in harsh wild environments. This translates to a huge advantage in the wolf world. Living a few years longer can make the difference between an unknown individual and a leader. North American winters are incredibly harsh. Temperatures can drop to tens of degrees below zero. Prey is scarce, disease spreads, weaker wolves disappear one by one, but the strongest individuals survive, and many of them are black wolves. When they reach adulthood, they often become the most prominent members of the pack. Not because of their fur color, but because of their resilience. They are more enduring, more resilient, and recovers faster from injuries in the struggle for alpha male status. These advantages are incredibly important. A fight between two alpha wolves can last for hours. Continuous bites, deep gashes in the flesh, exhaustion and pain. The winner isn't always the strongest, but the one who endures best, and many times it's the black wolf. Gradually, they climb to the top of the pack's hierarchy, becoming true leaders. But power isn't the only thing that makes them special. What's more terrifying is their hunting style. A pack of wolves doesn't attack immediately. They study their target, observe, follow, and wait. A wounded moose, an old reindeer, or a lone bison. When the target appears, the hunt begins. The gray wolves lead. They approach from multiple directions, constantly applying pressure, forcing the prey to move, forcing it to expend energy, forcing it to make mistakes. Meanwhile, the black wolves usually maintain their position behind, patient, cold, observing the entire chase. They are like heavyweight boxers held back for the decisive moment. And when the prey begins to tire, the black wolves appear. No retreat, no chance of escape. A powerful lunge to the hind leg, a bite that locks onto the throat. Just a few minutes later, the hunt was over. It's no coincidence that in many wilderness areas, one often finds black wolves standing at the center of the pack. They are not simply members, they are symbols of power, the individuals that the entire pack relies on for survival. However, Not all mutated creatures have such advantages. Some pay a heavy price for their differences, and the next creature is the perfect example. It's smaller, more agile, more intelligent, but also hunted more than anyone else, because what makes it stand out is precisely what humans desire most: the rare black fur. This is the story of the silent ghost of the northern forests, the black fox. If black wolves represent power, then black foxes are the embodiment of cunning. They don't possess overwhelming strength. They don't have jaws strong enough to crush bones. They can't take down large prey. And they don't live in large packs in the wild. A fox almost always has to face every danger alone. But that's what makes them one of the most intelligent creatures on the planet. Black foxes aren't actually a separate species. They are red foxes carrying a melanoma mutation, a small change in their genes, but enough to transform their familiar orange fur into a solid black. In some individuals, the black color covers their entire body, while others have shimmering silver hairs on their backs and tails, creating the famous variant known as the silver fox. Beautiful, rare, and extremely expensive, but in nature, beauty often comes with danger, especially when humans appear. Before we talk about that, let's look at the real life of a black fox. Unlike wolves or leopards, they can't rely on brute force. Every day is a battle of wits. An eagle can kill them. A wolf can tear them apart. A bear can steal all their food. Even lynxes are a constant threat. In the food chain, foxes are in a very precarious position, therefore. A mistake is almost synonymous with death. That's why they've developed incredible observational skills. A fox's ears can rotate independently, constantly picking up sounds from multiple directions. They can hear the rustling of dry leaves, the softest footsteps, even the sound of a field mouse digging its burrow under the thick snow. In many northern forests, winter lasts for months. Snow covers everything. Prey almost disappears from sight, but for the fox they never really disappear. A small sound, a faint vibration, that's enough to pinpoint the exact location of the target. Then the magic happens. The fox stands still, listens, calculates, locks onto the target, then it leaps. Its entire body shoots into the air. Then it plunges headfirst into the thick snow. That is the fox's most famous hunting move, a nearly perfect technique, forged through thousands of years of evolution, and their black fur helps them do that more effectively in dark forests. Under dense pine canopies, the light is dim, darkness is everywhere. A red fox can still be spotted, but a black fox is different. They almost disappear into the environment. That's the first advantage. But that's also where the tragedy begins, because it's not just predators that notice them. Humans do too. For centuries, black fox fur has been one of the world's most luxurious commodities. Fur merchants hunt them relentlessly. In Europe, a coat made from silver fox fur once cost the equivalent of a fortune. The nobility viewed them as symbols of power, wealth, and status. Meanwhile, out in the wild, each black fox pays a price for its beauty. They become targets of relentless hunting. Traps, gunfires, prolonged chases, all for a coat of fur. Many populations have declined drastically. In some areas, they are almost never seen again. Ironically, the mutations that once helped them survive in nature now make them stand out from humans. And for the first time in their evolutionary history, the difference becomes a burden. But despite everything, these tiny specters still exist, still wandering deep in the forest, still hunting under the moonlight, still proving that intelligence is sometimes more terrifying than strength, however. If the black fox used its intelligence to survive, then the next creature would have almost no chance. From the moment it was born, its color made it a target, not of humans, not of other predators, but of the very law of survival, because in the scorching golden savanna of Africa, there is no place for white. And that is the story of one of the most famous mutants on the planet, the white lion. In the wild, there are mutations that create advantages. Black panthers become nocturnal assassins. Black wolves possess superior endurance. Black foxes blend into the deep forest. But not all are so lucky sometimes. Nature creates a creature too beautiful to survive, and the white lion is one such example. The first time one sees a white lion, most people think of myths. A coat as white as snow, Bright eyes, a majestic appearance, they are like gods stepping out of ancient legends in many African cultures. White lions were once considered sacred creatures, symbols of power, good luck, and divine protection. But nature doesn't care about those legends. Nature cares about only one thing: whether you can survive. And for a white lion, the answer is usually no. Unlike complete albino lions, white lions have a rare mutation called leucism. They still have pigmentation in their eyes and skin, but their fur has lost its characteristic yellow color. This creates an extremely striking appearance, and also an extremely dangerous one. Imagine you are standing in the middle of the African savanna, surrounded by golden grasslands stretching to the horizon. Low bushes, plains of dry, barren land, flickering sunlight. In that landscape, a golden lion could disappear in just a few steps, but a white lion wouldn't. It stands out like a spotlight in the dark night. All eyes are on it. The prey sees it, the enemy sees it, and even competitors see it. That makes their lives much more difficult, especially when they are young. Lion cubs usually learn to hunt from their mothers. They observe, they imitate, they hone their skills year after year. But for a white lion, even approaching prey is a challenge. Antelopes can spot them from a great distance. Zebra herds are more vigilant. Buffaloes immediately change direction. Each hunt becomes more difficult, and each failure means hunger and thirst. In nature, hunger and thirst kill more predators than any fight. An adult lion can go without food for days, but in the end it still has to hunt its prey, and that's where the power of the pride comes in. Lions are the only big cats that live in societies. They are not solitary. They fight together, they hunt together, and they protect each other. If a white lion cub is born into a stable pride, its chances of survival increase significantly. Mature females will assist in hunting. Other members will share food. The pride becomes a shield, protecting it from the disadvantages brought about by its color. But that doesn't mean life is easy. On the savanna, everything is a competition. Other lion prides, hungry hyenas, territorial battles, and countless other dangers. A standout individual is always the most easily noticed target. When the pride is attacked, white lions are often the first to be spotted. When conflict arises, they often become the most easily identifiable target. Every disadvantage is magnified. Every mistake is more costly. So why do they still survive? Because sometimes, nature doesn't just select based on efficiency, but also based on probability. Some individuals are lucky enough to be born in the right environment. Some are protected by the pride. Some live long enough to reproduce, and so their genes continue to be passed on. Even though the chances are extremely slim, even though the survival rate is significantly lower, they still survive as a reminder that not every successful creature is born perfect. Some have to fight harder than others from day one. White lions are not gods, not miracles, nor are symbols of invincibility. They are simply warriors carrying a huge disadvantage, and each day of their survival is a victory over nature. But if white lions are proof of the harshness of mutation, then the next creature shows something entirely different, because this time, the white color is no longer a curse. It becomes a weapon, a real advantage, a rare gift that nature has inadvertently bestowed. Hidden among the frigid rainforests of Canada, there is a species of polar bear so white that the natives believe they were born from the spirit of snow. And the amazing thing is, they hunt more efficiently than their black-colored brethren. This is the story of the divine bear, a mutant favored by nature. In most stories about mutations, white is usually a curse. It makes the creature conspicuous, easy to spot, difficult to hunt, difficult to survive. But deep in the coastal forests of Western Canada, there exists an exception so rare that for centuries, people believed they were supernatural creatures. The indigenous people called them spirit bears. Spirit bears. According to ancient legends, these were gifts from the gods to remind humanity of the ice age that once covered the earth. They were snow white, but they weren't polar bears. Nor were they albino bears. In fact, they were just an extremely rare mutation of the North American black bear, a variant created by a recessive gene. Their eyes remained black. The nose is still black. The skin still retains its normal pigmentation. Only the fur has turned a characteristic creamy white. At first glance, that seems like a disadvantage. A white creature standing out in the green forest. How can it hunt effectively? How can it survive? But then, nature once again proves that it is always more complex than we imagine. The habitat of the divine bear is completely different from the savanna of the white lion. This is not a vast grassland, but rather icy rivers flowing from the mountains to the sea. Rivers teeming with salmon, and every year, millions of salmon make their final journey of life. They swim upstream, overcoming rapids and waterfalls, overcoming strong currents, to return to where they were born. That's when the feast began. A host of predators appeared: eagles, wolves, otters, and of course the bears for most black bears. Catching salmon isn't easy. Salmon have incredibly sharp eyesight. Especially when looking from underwater, they easily spot prominent dark shadows above the water's surface. A black bear standing on the riverbank, creating a large shadow, and the fish quickly dodge, but with the divine bear it's different. Their white fur blends in with the light reflected from the sky. When viewed from underwater, they almost disappear. Salmon find it harder to detect their presence. This means they can get closer to more prey. Numerous field studies have documented something astonishing. The white bear's hunting success rate is often higher than that of black bears living in the same area. A seemingly useless mutation has inadvertently become a survival advantage. For the first time in our history, the white color is no longer a burden. It has become a weapon, a real advantage. This explains why this mutation has persisted for thousands of years. Not by luck, but by effectiveness. In nature, any trait that helps an organism find food better has a chance of being retained, no matter how rare, no matter how different, no matter how strange. However, not every white creature receives such favor in another part of the world. A similar mutation has produced completely opposite results. It brings no advantage, no strength, no opportunity. It only brings pain, hunger and thirst, and almost certainly death. Because if there is any species that relies on camouflage more than bears, it is the crocodile. Nature's perfect ambush machines, and when a crocodile is born completely white, tragedy is almost inevitable. This is the story of the albino crocodile, one of the most extreme mutations ever to exist in the wild. Throughout millions of years of evolution, crocodiles have remained virtually unchanged. When the dinosaurs disappeared, when the continents shifted, when the climate changed, they survived, silently, cold and deadly. That's why many scientists call crocodiles the perfect hunting machines. Every part of their body serves a single purpose: ambush. Their eyes are located on top of their heads, allowing them to observe while most of their bodies are submerged underwater. Their nostrils are positioned high, allowing them to breathe without revealing themselves. Their dark skin blends in with the mud, and their patience is almost endless. A crocodile can lie motionless for hours, even days, waiting for the perfect moment in the world of crocodiles. Camouflage isn't an advantage. It's everything without camouflage. No food, no life. So when an albino crocodile appears, the whole system almost collapses. Unlike the divine bear, unlike the white lion, this is true albinism, a mutation that causes the body to lose the ability to produce melanin, the pigment responsible for skin color, fur color, and eye color. As a result, their entire bodies turn a pale white. Their eyes have a characteristic red or pink hue due to the visible blood vessels behind the retina. At first glance, they look incredibly unique, even strangely beautiful. But for nature, it's a disaster. Imagine a murky river. The water is dark. The banks are overgrown with reeds. In the midst of this scene, a bright white body stands out like a lamp in the night. There's no more concealment, no more element of surprise. Prey spots them from afar. Fish stay away. Birds are more wary. Drinking animals dare not approach. And the perfect ambush machine suddenly loses its most important weapon. Many people think crocodiles are very fast, but in reality they are only fast over short distances. Sudden lunges, lightning attacks, that's their forte, if forced to chase prey over long distances. Crocodiles have almost no chance. That makes life incredibly difficult for albino crocodiles. But the tragedy doesn't end there. The biggest threat comes from something that all normal crocodiles need: sunlight. Crocodiles are cold-blooded animals. They depend on ambient temperature to regulate their bodies. Every day they need to bask in the sun, to warm up their muscles, to boost their metabolism, to prepare for hunting. But for albino crocodiles, sunlight is their enemy. Without melanin protection, their skin is extremely sensitive to ultraviolet rays. Just too much exposure. Their skin can get burned, severe damage, even infection. Meanwhile, their albino eyes face a similar problem. Strong light makes it difficult for them to see. Difficulty in targeting, difficulty in reacting to danger. Each advantage of the crocodile disappears one by one. Camouflage ability, ambush ability, sun tolerance, observation ability, all are taken away by the mutation. That's why biologists rarely encounter adult albino crocodiles in the wild. Most don't live long enough, they die young, become prey to larger predators, or starve to death because they can't hunt effectively. Interestingly, most of the albino crocodiles known to humans today live in captivity in conservation areas, zoos, or research centers. There, they are provided with food, receive medical care, are protected from harsh sunlight, and to avoid the dangers of nature. In other words, they survive thanks to human assistance, not through their own survival abilities. This is perhaps the clearest example showing not every mutation is evolution. Not every difference brings advantage. Sometimes, a mutation is simply an error that nature will quickly eliminate. But the world of mutations holds even more strangeness than that, because not every different creature fails like the albino crocodile. Some are quietly succeeding, some find ways to adapt, some turn weaknesses into strengths, and others continue to exist despite all the rules. Next, we will encounter creatures that lie in the middle ground, not entirely failures, not entirely successful. The gambles of fate, black squirrel, piebald deer, mutant zebra, creatures writing their own survival stories. In nature, every mutation is like rolling the dice. No one knows whether the result will be a gift or a death sentence. Black panthers are the winners, albino alligators are the losers. But most mutated creatures don't fall into those two extremes, they exist in between. A gray area where survival depends just as much on luck as on adaptability. And perhaps no creature exemplifies this better than the black squirrel. At first glance, they're nothing special. A squirrel, a bushy tail, a life revolving around finding food. But in the forests of northern North America, their black fur offers a significant advantage. Winter temperatures here can drop very low. Snow covers the ground for months. Food is scarce. Every day is a battle against the cold. In those conditions, the black fur acts like a natural solar panel. It absorbs heat more efficiently, helping the body stay warm longer, reducing the amount of energy needed, and that makes a huge difference. A squirrel that retains heat better can survive the winter more easily, can spend more time searching for food, can reproduce more successfully. In this case, the mutation is truly an advantage, but not everyone is as lucky as the black squirrel. In other forests, some deer are born with strange appearances. Mottled patches of white fur appear all over their bodies. It looks as if someone accidentally spilled paint on them. This is the piebald phenomenon, a rare form of pigment disorder. From a distance, they are incredibly striking. Many even consider them beautiful, but in nature, beauty doesn't equate to effectiveness. A normal deer blends into the brown and green of the forest. Meanwhile, the white patches on the piebald deer's body make them much more noticeable, especially in the summer, when the snow no longer covers the ground. That's not the worst part. Many piebald individuals also carry other deformities: curved spine, misaligned jaw, unusually short legs, or internal organ problems, in other words. The mutation doesn't just change color, it can also change the entire body, making life more difficult from birth. An adult piebald deer in the wild. That's an incredible victory. A victory over disease, over predators, and over the harshness of natural selection itself. But perhaps no creature illustrates the fragility of mutation more clearly than the zebra. Millions of years of evolution have created those distinctive black and white stripes. At first glance, they just look like a pattern, but in reality, it's an incredibly complex defense system. When the whole herd moves, the black and white stripes blend together, forming a moving wall that makes it difficult for predators to pinpoint their target. Lions see the whole herd, but it's difficult for them to focus on individual animals. It's a form of collective camouflage, a tactic that has helped zebras survive for millions of years, but sometimes nature breaks that code. Some individuals are born with round spots instead of stripes. Others develop unusual dark patches. Some almost completely lose their characteristic pattern to humans. They are incredibly unique. To lions, they are the perfect target, while the entire pride blends in. The mutated individual immediately stands out. It becomes the most recognizable, the easiest to track, the easiest to attack, like a red dot in a black and white picture. And when the hunt begins, the different one is often the first to be chosen. That's the cruel truth of nature. Nature doesn't reward uniqueness. Nature rewards efficiency. Anything that disrupts a survival system perfected over millions of years comes at a price, but success or failure. These creatures still have a chance. They can still run, they can still hunt, they can still reproduce, they can still survive. The next creature, however, doesn't. Because this time, the mutation doesn't just change color, it changes the entire body, creating creatures so bizarre that many believe they only exist in mythology. Two-headed snakes, two-headed turtles, creatures possessing two brains in the same body. At first glance, they seem like a miracle, but in nature, they are one of the most devastating tragedies creations ever made. And this is where our story enters its final chapter. Throughout this journey, we've encountered some lucky mutants, those who turned error into advantage, those who survived despite all predictions. But there are some mutations that, from the moment they appeared, had no chance. Not because they were weaker, not because they were less intelligent, but because their very bodies became the battlefield. A never-ending war, a war fought within themselves. Let's begin with one of the strangest phenomena ever recorded in nature. Two-headed snakes. At first glance, they look like creatures straight out of ancient mythology. Two heads, two pairs of eyes, two constantly moving tongues, one body. Many consider it a miracle, a wonder of nature, but the reality is quite the opposite. This phenomenon is scientifically called polycephaly. It occurs when the embryo begins the process of splitting but doesn't complete it. As a result, two brains share one body. It sounds simple, but for survival, it's a disaster. In nature, every decision must be made in a split second. Turn left, turn right, attack or flee. Even a fraction of a second's delay can determine life or death. But in two-headed snakes, the two brains often disagree. One head wants to go forward, the other wants to turn back. One head spots prey, the other is focused on something else even. In many cases, the two heads bite each other, mistaking the opponent for an intruder. An internal conflict erupts within the same body. And nature never forgives slowness. When the predator appears, a moment of hesitation is enough to end it all. That's why most two-headed snakes don't survive long in the wild, even without being hunted. Finding food is incredibly difficult. Every hunt becomes a battle. Every movement becomes a struggle. They weren't born to win. They were born to fight against themselves. The same situation applies to two-headed turtles. Unlike snakes, turtles appear slower, less dangerous, but the problem remains the same. Two brains, one body, two wills, one direction in captivity. Humans can care for them, feed them, treat illnesses, protect them from danger, but in the wild, there's no second chance. No one to protect them, no one to help them. Only natural selection, and natural selection almost always produces the same result: elimination. But if the two ends represent a tragedy of body structure, then albino reptiles represent a tragedy of color. Imagine a python meters long, hiding among the leaves, waiting for prey. That's how hunting has existed for millions of years. Now replace that perfect color with bright white. Everything changes. Prey sees it. Birds of prey see it. Enemies see it. The entire survival strategy collapses. The albino pythons we see today mostly survive in captivity, not because they are stronger, but because nature rarely gives them a chance to mature. The same is true for many lizard species, salamanders, geckos, snakes, and countless other reptiles. In their world, camouflage is not an option, it is a necessity. Losing that ability means losing the chance of survival. And then, when you look at all these creatures, a question arises. Why does nature create such individuals? Why do these inaccuracies persist? Why do these unfavorable mutations continue to appear over millions of years? The answer lies in the deepest essence of life, Evolution is not a perfect designer. It is a process of relentless experimentation. Each generation, nature rolls out millions of new cards. Some fail, some succeed, some disappear. Some change the course of evolutionary history. No one knows the outcome. And that leads us to the final question. Is mutation a mistake or the beginning of something bigger? In the wild, there is no fairness. There is no reward for those who strive. There is no pity for the weak. There is only one rule: survival. The mutated creatures we just encountered are the clearest evidence of that rule. Some are favored by nature. Some are betrayed by nature. Some become the most fearsome killers on the planet. Some cannot survive their first days. But they all have one thing in common. They are the result of randomness. And it is that randomness that has created the natural world as we know it today. Without errors, there would be no adaptation. Without adaptation, there would be no evolution. And without evolution, there would be no life as we know it. Each mutated creature is like a test, a gamble placed on the table by nature. Most fail, a few succeed, but sometimes those considered failures become the future of an entire species. Black panther, black wolf, spirit bear, or other strange creatures, they all remind us of a truth. In nature, perfection is not about being the strongest. The strongest is the one who adapts best. And sometimes the most different creatures are the most vivid proof of that rule. Thank you for joining us on our journey to discover the strangest mutations of the wild. If you enjoy stories about nature, survival, and the untold secrets of this planet, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next adventures. Because out there, nature still holds countless secrets waiting to be unraveled. Hello, and see you on the next journey.